Dr. Kathy Bush.
And hello, I'm Dr. Tara Peters, and we are the Leadership Doctors.
And welcome to another episode of our Lessons from Leaders series, where we get an opportunity to talk to people in various executive leadership roles around the world and in various industries. And so today we're excited. We're going to be chatting with Mike Lewandowski, who's had a really great career working as an executive in the HR function in various different kinds of organizations around the Midwest, and has recently started a new job in the RV industry at Genesis Products. And so welcome, Mike.
Hello.
We're excited to chat with you today, learn a little bit about your leadership journey and some of the principles of leadership that you care about and help other leaders in your various organizations work on. And so that is exciting for us. And of course, you've transitioned to a new job right in the middle of a pandemic. So we'd like to hear a little bit about your thoughts leading in this period of time. So let's go ahead and get started. Ready to go?
Yes, I am. Thank you. And thanks for the invite today.
We're honored to have you as a guest on our series. And so, okay, let's get started with a little bit about your leadership journey. So you've had some very cool jobs and an opportunity to lead in a few different industries. And so if you could just give us a high-level overview of the kinds of work you've been doing and where you are now.
Sure, sounds good. Well, I got my start when I got out of the Navy in my mid-20s, and I then had an opportunity to get into school, and had an opportunity to get into a local manufacturing plant in Midland, Michigan. At the time it was called Quebecor Printing, or Pendle Printing, and it had a whole bunch of names, and it got acquired along the way several times. But I was fortunate enough to get hired by somebody who was a leader in and of himself. His name is Larry Shue, and I worked with several leaders along the way who kind of helped me find my way, kind of helped me develop real basic skills, how to speak publicly, right? How to handle difficult conversations. I'll get into that kind of stuff maybe a little bit later. But the journey has been pretty cool. So I spent about 10 years in manufacturing and printing manufacturing. Very busy, 600-700 people. There are lots of opportunities for people to get hurt as well. But just really good experiences there. And then I decided to enter into the automotive world and started commuting. And if you live in Midland, Michigan, you know that you either go to work for Dow Chemical, or you move, or you commute. And I decided to commute, and I accepted an HR manager role for TRW Automotive, which gave me about 3 years in a really tough and rigid environment where people weren't nearly as nice as the folks at Pendle Printing, but it was a really good experience for me in dealing with difficult people. And then after that, I got a chance to work at Volkswagen Group of America in Auburn Hills, Michigan. So that was my first corporate office job, first, wearing a suit and tie every day job, and getting off a plant floor. So that was a very new kind of experience for me. But a very key step in my journey of leadership and human resources. And then it was time to leave the German company and go back to a U.S. company at Ryder Logistics, again, still based in Michigan. And that was an opportunity to work and have HR responsibility for over 10,000 people, and lots of drivers, so lots of transportation and supply chain folks and distribution centers. And so I had distribution center floors, but also had driver truck yards, and then several key offices that I had HR responsibility for. So that one kind of ran the gamut of white collar, blue collar, office environment, tons and tons of travel, which I've had pretty much every step along the way, an opportunity to train new leaders, and just one of the key skills that I picked up along the way that I really enjoy is frontline leadership development, and then just leadership in general, and developing leaders, and figured out along the way how to support executives, including a president and CEO and many other VPs, SVPs, EVPs, all the titles, but on top of supporting frontline supervisors, right? So I was told once that I'm great with the boots and great with the suits. right? So I picked that one up along the way. An attorney at Volkswagen said that about me. So that I consider that to be one of my greatest compliments in my career, that I can walk a plant floor and people love to be around me. And I'm very comfortable with the folks in union, non-union, doesn't matter, but also comfortable in an executive suite. Right. So, and then most recently, left Ryder earlier this year and joined Genesis Products here in Goshen, Indiana. So we had to move, and we're extremely happy with that, extremely happy with this job. But second week on the job, the epidemic turned into a pandemic, and all of us had to start working from home, and we shut all of our plants down. So this has been a very interesting start during this pandemic, but still an exciting one nevertheless.
So Mike, it's great to hear your journey and really how all those pieces have fit together. And really, to your point, the whole suits and boots, right, experiences that you've had have really been an opportunity for you to acquire new skills and have new experiences. And so I think it's really interesting that you talk about how your newest transition has come literally in the midst, right, of COVID-19. And so here you are with Genesis, this brand new organization, but you have all this experience that you can leverage and that you can rely upon. And so it would be great for our viewers, because they've got a vast array of backgrounds and experiences, to really hear from you with, given the move that you've made, and then now you've taken on this new director role in an HR capacity, and people being really an integral part of navigating this pandemic that we're all dealing with. Give us a window in terms of really how you are helping leaders in the organization with operations in terms of the teams, and really what you're doing right now to really help leaders to navigate this space that they find themselves in as they're really trying to figure out what to do given the pandemic and again, the circumstances that they find themselves faced with.
Yeah, wow. Well, so again, second week on the job, the virus was going from the East Coast and West Coast and into Michigan and into Indiana and into the rural area here. And so a little bit of context first. I took this job. This is a different kind of company, different kind of culture, and they typically are, right? All companies are different in some ways. This one is privately held, much smaller, even though it's 9 plants, 7 of them are in this area and close by. But it's, about 900 people, where I'm used to, several thousand. And again, this one's not publicly traded. So we've got a president and CEO who is much younger than me, who is very aggressive and high energy and result oriented, as you would expect with a CEO. And the expectation was from the start, the question was, how do we shut down all of these plants? How do we do it responsibly? How do we do it with an eye toward taking care of our people? So it's a small company, and I was reminded that I took a job with a small company that was putting a big focus on its people, the hourly people, the salary people alike. Salary people had to take a pay cut right away, so we had to deal with that issue, and dealing with the fact that a lot of other salary people got laid off, right? And then on the hourly side, several hundred of them, how do we lay them off responsibly and get them set up for unemployment? So we were dealing with a lot of things right out of the gates. And I was told I had to do that from home. I didn't even live close by. I couldn't just drive in. At the time, I lived about 4 hours from the office. So from home, I was trying to work with my team, and I've got a team of 10 people on the HR team here, and in terms of having to call all employees, all hourly, all salary, and the HR team took control of all of that. And then the other piece that was going on at the same time is we were figuring out how to get qualified for the federal funding, right? And thankfully that came through. We were able to get qualified for it, so that there was incentive for us to have everybody on the payroll, even if they weren't working, right? Like a lot of companies are doing. So then we had to recall everybody else back and say, hey, we're going to put you back on the payroll, stop collecting your unemployment, and we're going to pay you, right? And you can imagine, because there's not just state unemployment now, there's this federal addition to it, which is much more, that there are people in a lot of companies making an hourly rate of pay who literally make plenty more on unemployment, right? So the incentive to come back was making it that much more challenging. In the meantime, we had to go through a cut on the HR team. So, those who are left, and I've done all of this before, where you really, I learned this a long time ago. You want to take care of the people that are leaving, but you really want to make sure that you're thinking about and focusing on the people who are left behind, right? Just one of those key lessons is because the lessons, they're watching you treat other people, right? And they're watching how all of that is going down. The hourly people were, the salary people were, supervisors, and we have, like I would imagine you're seeing elsewhere, the morale has taken a hit in all of this, right? And engagement has taken a hit, and now we're calling people back, and everybody's back on the payroll, just not everybody's working, right? And having said that, probably over half are working at this point, and many of the plants are coming back up to speed, and many of our customers are as well.
Boy, talk about a baptism by fire, for lack of a better way of describing that, right? And I was thinking as you were describing it, Mike, how all of the experiences that you've had in your various roles, working as an HR leader and working with lots of different leaders in various kinds of circumstances, certainly informed your ability to act quickly and to assure people and to take effective actions. But also, what a great learning for you, for anybody who has to go through something that nobody would choose, but to be able to debrief and to talk with your team to kind of figure out, what did we learn from this? What can we do differently? And so as I'm thinking about all of that, surely you have all your friends and people that you've worked with in the past and all the people that you're meeting now. And so I'm wondering what has surprised you from the perspective of leading during a crisis. What it could be that it surprised you in a positive or a negative way, but what have you noticed about leading in a crisis that has kind of caused you to think about what these lessons are that you've learned?
Sure. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, in general, people during these times are willing to do so much more than they're typically asked to do. And they will allow, and I'm witnessing this every day at this point, but for those that I'm talking to, previous companies and others, and just other people in my network, they're saying the same thing. Maybe it's because people feel lucky and fortunate to have a job, right? But how people are allowing their jobs to evolve, how people are just picking up the slack when others are no longer working with them. The desk next to them had somebody sitting at it yesterday and today it doesn't. And that's many desks in many companies. But what I've noticed with my team and with others at this company is that people are just willing to pick up the slack. People are willing to allow their jobs to grow and evolve, and the breadth of responsibilities are growing every day. We're asking people to do things that even we don't know how to do in many cases. So that the first thing that comes to mind is that people are just willing to run with it, right? And that has surprised me in a really good way. I mean, that's and I see it from person to person to person. And I'm not just talking about office people. I'm also talking about plant floor manufacturing people who are having to work in a different work cell than they worked in prior to the layoff, right? They're willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done and satisfy the needs of the customer. That would be the first one. The second one is technology, right? And I'm to a point in my career where, I'm not the tech savvy guy that I sometimes wish I was. But when you're forced to figure out technology, right? This conversation we're having right now, you will learn it when it's forced, right? We all will. And now I think, post-pandemic, I think the world of work is always evolving. I think the world of work is going to continue to evolve, and the number of offices and brick and mortar corporate office buildings is going to be drastically and dramatically reduced. And we saw that coming. That's been happening for a while, but I think it's going to happen now in a more accelerated fashion.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. It's like necessity, right? Forces our hands and causes us to create and make things happen and innovate. in ways that we didn't imagine. And suddenly things that took a 10-point plan and, 2 years to get off the ground suddenly happen in days as opposed to years. And so, of course, as you know, Kathy and I have written a book. And so, of course, we were intrigued as you were talking about the morale and the motivation piece, because our book is called The Demotivated Employee. And so, of course, we're really concerned about the challenges that organizations have faced and quite frankly are facing, and you've even alluded to that, with dealing with employee engagement. We know there's data out there suggesting that nearly 70% of employees are at some level of disengagement at work, and then obviously there's a cost impact to organizations. And so talk to our audience about what you're doing. I know that you've seen people picking up some slack and chipping in. And so how do you imagine yourself trying to continue to build on that in your HR role? And what are the other kinds of things that you see that might be helpful in terms of helping employees to not lose their motivation and to keep morale high, given the current challenges, but also the likelihood that we're going to be continuing to navigate this pandemic for some time into the future?
Yeah. Very interesting topic for sure. What I have found in my career, and I'm finding it again here at Genesis, is that people don't just want a job, right? People want to know that first, what they are doing every day matters in the eyes of our customers, and matters in the eyes of our owners and bosses. They want to know that it matters. That's this intrinsic motivation that is just alive and kicking, and it's strong. And they also want to know that this job is more than a job. They want to know that it's a career. One of the things that we are implementing now, and it's been an ongoing program for several months at this point, but we're calling it Manufacturing Careers, and it's all about taking these plant level manufacturing employees who are a part of building a process and building products for the RV industry. And they work in a cell and they're doing the same thing every day. And it'd be really easy for them to see, as it is for a lot of people in their jobs, to not be able to see that what they're doing matters in the big scheme of things. We have a program and a certification checklist and part of a bigger program that helps people see objectively what they need to be trained in and what they need to certify in order to become eligible for a promotion to the next step, right? Which along with that comes obviously higher wages, higher levels of responsibility, which is most of the time more important than the wage, by the way, is the responsibility and that sense that I am growing my job and I'm growing my career and I'm able to do a better job of taking care of those at home, right? So that's the first thing I would say to that. The second thing I would say is the old adage is that people don't leave bad companies, they leave bad bosses. I am a firm believer that when you have a supervisor or manager or executive, doesn't matter to me what their title is per se, but if they are mistreating people and if they are disrespectful by nature, conversationally or in any other way, that you will drive good people out, right? So there always has to be a focus on the identification and removal of those problems. And sometimes people just need that 2x4 conversation to get it corrected. Most of the time, people that once they get to a certain point in their lives and in their careers and mistreating people or having that kind of behavior, it's extremely hard to get that to change. And in some companies, it's more acceptable. And sometimes you have to give people motivation and help them exit and help them join a company where they can be successful and happier.
Boy, your insight about the impact that leaders have on the employee engagement, the motivation of their workers is so spot on, certainly with what Tara and I have been focusing on in our book and as the leadership doctors as well. And so I'm thinking about all the conversations you and I have had over a big handful of years as you've transitioned in different roles. And I know, and you actually alluded to it, Mike, I know that one of the things you really enjoy and have contributed really effectively to is leadership development. And so you've talked about kind of the way that you take people who are right in the beginning of their leadership experience, maybe frontline supervisors, and also how you impact and help people who are at the executive level take a look at things that they might be doing unintentionally that might be getting in the way. And so, so these things are hard sometimes to do. Some, leaders like everybody, we're busy people and we're proud people, and we don't want to hear that there's something maybe we should be doing differently or that we might be part of a problem. And so love it if you could give our audience a few of the kind of key principles or ideas on how one would go about developing their leadership skills. Maybe there are some best practices that other than, I know you've developed some workshops directly, but in addition to those kinds of things, other kinds of ways that a person might go about developing their leadership skills that would be helpful for people to think about.
Sure, excellent. I love this topic probably the most, as you know. The first thing I would say is that, and it took me a while to get there, I have to admit, that this whole science slash artwork around self-awareness is really, really important. And it's probably just been in the last several years has it come to real light for me. StrengthsFinder 2.0 has been a life-changing tool for me, but of course there are many personality profiles that we're all aware of. That one's been really important because it focuses on key strengths. So the first thing I would say is you have to understand yourself, and you have to understand where you get your energy from, where your passions are, and where your strengths really do lie, so that you can work on them, refine them, capitalize on them, and be able to grow a career around your strengths. When I first got my start, I didn't know I had any. And nobody was really talking to me about strengths. I was trying to figure out how to speak in front of a group of 10 people, right? I was trying to figure out how to talk to a supervisor and correct something he was doing wrong. I almost walked away from the entire career a couple of years in because I had to be a part of an employment termination discussion, and it was extremely difficult for me. So the first thing I would say is any tool somebody can get on self-awareness is really important, and don't let that just sit in the hard drive in a folder. Don't let that be printed out and shoved in a drawer. Have it in front of you every day. Refer to it early and often. Second thing I would say is that's been really important for me is the identification of what I've been afraid of and working through it and tackling the areas that I knew were a stretch for me. And I already alluded to public speaking. That was always, I struggled with that as a child. I struggled with that in high school. And early on in my adulthood, and I knew that I was not going to go very far in my career if I didn't overcome it. So that was one. Not at this point, you can put me in front of any number of people. It doesn't matter the stage. I very much enjoy it. I love teaching in the college classroom. I love teaching, as you said, frontline leaders and people along the way. And probably two of the biggest I'll call it improvement areas that once fixed helped my self-confidence more than anything else are those two things, right? When you nail a good speech, there's nothing like it, right? There's nothing like that feeling afterwards, but it's all in the preparation, right? Or when nobody else wants to have that difficult conversation with that very tough executive or that very tough employee, and you step up and you have that difficult conversation and you have enough of them that you're coaching other people on how to have those difficult conversations, that feels good as well, right? So then the final thing I will say on the subject is I've always tried to surround myself with people who are better than me and smarter than me. Early on, that wasn't hard to do. Everybody was better than me. But then by the time I joined a very well-known German OEM, I was never the smartest guy in any room. In fact, I just wasn't. But I always learn from all of them, and there's so much that you can do with the growth of your own self-confidence when you figure out how to converse with and rub shoulders with executives, right? So those are some of the things that I've picked up along the way that have been very, very helpful for me.
Well, Mike, you shared some just really awesome insight and wisdom and perspective. And so, Kathy and I just want to thank you so much for being with us today on Lessons from Leaders.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for the time. I very much appreciated it. It was fun.
It was our pleasure to have you. It's been great
Yeah.
for us as well. Our eyes have been open and we've been enlightened, and we know that our audience that has tuned in today to watch your segment has also gotten perspective and insight that will be useful to them in terms of their own leadership development. And so we want to encourage our viewers to head over to our website, theleadershipdoctors.com, where you'll find more lessons from leaders, from industry execs just like Mike, who are sharing insights and perspective that will be helpful to you in your leadership journey.